call a February 10th meeting on the subdivision reg review to order. Do we want to do you care whether we do a list of who's present?
It doesn't hurt. It's not technically on the agenda, but I think it's probably helpful for Gloria when she does the minutes.
Okay. I've lost sight of the people who are on.
Oh, let me stop the screen share then first, and I'll go back to it.
Okay. Okay, Ray Williams.
Ray Williams present.
Alvin Hill.
Alvin Hill present.
Guy Zor.
Guy Zor present.
John Linky.
John B. Linky present.
Randy Blackmer. Did I miss anyone?
Jane Salcy's not in yet, but we're expecting her to come in. We'll just acknowledge when she makes it in.
Okay. So we have the roll call, and I guess it's time for you're going to take over from here, I assume, right, Tara?
Yep. Yeah, I'm going to, let me bring the screen share back up.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah. So we will do as we have done. Gotta move this silly window thing. Come on, window, move away. Which is just to find the comments and then go here. I'm going to change the view here just to make it simpler. Here comes Jane. There we go. And the review tab. I'm just going to show. Turn on track changes. Okay. Oh, well, I couldn't hide that after all. Right, bear with me here. My screen is jumping around. How annoying. All right, so we are on article, well, it's going to be Article 3 again, although your draft currently says Article 2, Application Procedures and Commission Consideration. And we'll skip right down to comments. Some of this is formatting. I'm going to skip the formatting stuff because that is just essentially typing, not content. We addressed this, I believe, when we did the definitions, but I will go right to it. Persons wishing to submit such preliminary plans must notify the ZEO 10 days prior to the date of the next regularly scheduled meeting of the commission in order to be placed on the agenda. Actually, it says 10 calendar days, and that is based on a note that we have here. Is this calendar days or business days? Marla's comment, which was a good one, to address the concerns about the meaning of days, recommend removing the words calendar days globally and provide a new definition as follows. Days means calendar days unless otherwise specified. No specific definition is provided in either the zoning or subdivision statutes, but in zoning, when business days are intended, the statute specifically says business days. So we actually followed that and did add that already last week in the definitions. I just wanted to acknowledge that. Scrolling down, and we've got that comment repeats a couple places. Okay, so here we have, and again, this is more of just an acknowledgement. We had removed this number 4 at one point. For the purpose of these regulations, the number of lots shall be determined by the cumulative number of lots which have been created out of the original tract as the original tract existed on the effective date of the subdivision regulations in the town of Thompson, which is February 3rd, 1969. And Janet had commented, I noticed the removal of number 4. The usefulness of this phrase is in determining open space. Open space is only required for subdivisions of 4 or more lots. So without this phrase, someone could do a 3-lot subdivision every other year and never have to provide open space. So based on that, we restored that provision. Unless anybody has an objection about that, I would move on. I did have a question myself, which I have not yet answered, which is the 4-lot threshold by statute, or is that an assumption based on the current subdivision regulations? Cindy, do you know which is the case? If the threshold for determining open space starts at 4 lots by statute, or is that a choice? Are you aware?
No, I'm not aware. That's easy enough to find. It's chapter 126, so.
Okay, so I'm just gonna drop a note here. Needs more review. See chapter 126. Okay. I mean, I don't know that it matters ultimately. I just like to know if, because we have places where it says 4 and places where it says 3. So I'd like to know what the distinction is, why we have a 4-lot threshold versus a 3-lot threshold in different places. All right, this was just based on a comment that the appendix with the table of fees had not yet been added. I do have it added in the current iteration, so that will now appear in the draft. The same table of fees that we're using in the zoning regulations.
Okay, Tara, I wasn't at the last meeting. We're just going to go on. If anyone has anything break in, we'll just let you keep on.
Yes,
going.
Absolutely. Because Randy, this is already a draft that's been gone through once by the commission. So this is now the second round comments. But if you do have something, yes, by all means, just break in. And I can go back if there's something I've skipped over.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't supposed to be doing any action on each specific piece. So we'll just go on until somebody says we need to vote on something.
Yep. Or unless there's, unless there's a comment that actually is related to a question we haven't resolved yet.
Yeah.
We have, again, a comment from Marla. Go ahead.
Actually, I hate to, Randy is kind of just brought up a good point, and I did some homework lately on subcommittees, and the subcommittees only thing we're supposed to be doing in subcommittee, which is comes from the regular committee, is that we can talk about anything and go over it, and whatever we do in a subcommittee, then officially we have to send it to the regular committee for them to hash it out, like we said last week. Because I got some paperwork here that I chased down on the internet and stuff about subcommittees, how it's supposed to be organized. You know, you can have it organized just to do specific items. Yep. And then it goes back to the chair, just to let you know. Okay. If you want, I'll read a little excerpt I put so everybody on what we're doing, so we'll have an idea. And it's a subdivision of a committee that is assigned a portion of the committee's jurisdiction, holds hearings, amends, legislates, and reports to the committee. So that's all we do. You know, we don't really do any voting or anything. We just kind of like, okay, this is what we think. Send it to the in my opinion, and then we send it to the regular meeting and hash it out there. And if something's not right, send it back to the subcommittee. What they're saying is use the subcommittee to do all the hashing, so we don't waste time in a regular meeting.
Yeah, well, that is fundamentally what we're doing, of course.
I just wanted to make it a little bit more of a point.
Yep. Okay. thanks, John. Moving on, again, we had a comment here from Marla needing a definition for NDDH, the Northeast District Department of Health. That is actually there. That was actually there before the comment. I think she just missed it because it goes by so fast. Let's see. Here we have a comment in number 6 on this page, the requirements of the plan. The first item, we have number 6, Roman numeral 1, the subdivision name, boundaries, North Point, date, scale, legend, and title, preliminary plan. Marla questioned whether preliminary plan belonged there. I concur with her. I believe that was inadvertent and that should be struck. That was a style point. Okay, here's another one. We've asked this question a couple of times and I still don't have the answer. So Cindy, this is also on our research list, whichever of us gets to it first. In the letters to abutters, we have the applicant shall send notice of the proposed subdivision by certified mail, return receipt requested, to abutting owners within 500 feet of any boundary line and mailed not less than 10 days nor more than 30 days before the scheduled public hearing of the subdivision application to the commission. So this is a question that Janet had posed and we have yet to actually answer it. Is there a reason for notifying abutters within 500 feet, whereas the zoning regulation notification to abutters requires within 200 feet?
Yeah, again, I don't know the answer to that, but you know, I actually took my other computer and I pulled up the subdivision regulation so I can look through that while we're doing this.
Okay. So then the other question is there an internal reason? So is there a reason in statute and is there a reason that this commission would prefer to send letters to abutters within 500 feet of the boundary lines of a subdivision versus what we would normally ask in the zoning regulation? So that is probably something worth discussing.
Well, I would think that the 500 feet is because the subdivision land, you could have acres and acres of it. So you need to notify as many people as possible to land that was open space for years, and just to let them know that it's not any longer going to be just plain open space. So you have to let more people know that are close, you know, that are surrounding it, because you're talking about a lot of acres when you subdivide.
Okay.
It can be, but my feeling would be to keep the numbers, use 200 feet on both, unless you find some reason that, you know, somewhere in the statutes that says we have to use 500 feet on this.
Okay. Well, yeah, but then again, like I said, because you could have somebody wants to subdivide 25 acres. So in 25 acres, there's not many people around with 200 feet, right?
Well, it's 200 feet of the boundary line.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Okay, I hear what you're saying.
That's another, that means it's going to be roughly a house lot away. I mean, that's giving you a perimeter of, I think the 200 feet would be adequate, but that's my opinion. Okay. Anyone else want to voice their opinion?
Yes, Alvin Hill, please. Just remember that in the assessor's office, all those maps are based on 200 feet. So if you've got 2,500 acres or 2 acres or 25, it's all at 200, you know.
Feet, okay.
200 feet is more, 500 feet is ridiculous, I think. Because all our maps of the assessor's office, 200 feet.
Okay.
I concur.
Yeah, it's Jane Salsey. I agree with what Alvin just said. If all the maps in the assessor's office are at 200 feet, why muddy the waters and make it more confusing, take it at the 200 feet?
Okay. No, I hear you. I understand it. Yep, I got it. I'm gonna mute myself in a couple of minutes. My dog is outside. I'm outside with her.
You let your dog go outside after she had a spa day? That seems...
Well, she has to, do her duty, Tara.
Oh, I suppose that's true.
At least she's not running off on me. She's right
So
here.
So not hearing any objection, we'll go, unless you find something, state statutes that say we have to go 500, we're gonna change that to 200.
Okay.
Everyone agree?
Ray, were you just trying to say something?
No, I agree. It should be the match the other regulation.
Okay. So let me just say consensus is, if not statutory, revert to 200 feet. Okay. All right. So there's another comment about what kinds of days are they? This was a clarification point by Marla. Section 3, application process and consideration. After it has been determined by the ZEO that the application is complete and has been received by the Inland Wetlands Commission, 2 copies shall be retained for study by the commission and other interested agencies. So Marla pointed out that this actually is, and this is prior language, I think. This is not actually correct, that the language should be, after it has been determined by the ZEO that the application is complete and that an application has been received by the Inland Wetlands Commission, 2 copies shall be retained for study by the commission and other interested agencies, meaning the Inland Wetlands Commission application is not the same as the subdivision application, and both need to be in evidence. So again, that was procedural, but I wanted to call that out so that people will understand the change when it goes in. Okay, it's possible this is going to be a quickie tonight, guys, which would make me thrilled, because the next section, just thinking ahead, is where we are into the requirements for subdivision of land. That's a huge topic, and I'd like to have more commissioners available for that one. These comments, I think, are more like the other 2 articles we've already dealt with, which are sort of simpler, and we can get through pretty quickly. Let's see. Oh, but this is one that I think does merit discussion. So this is regarding the public hearing. The public hearing, it currently reads, a public hearing shall be held on any subdivision of, and again, we have whether it's 4 or 3, any subdivision of 3 lots or more. In addition, a public hearing regarding application for approval of a subdivision of less than 4 lots shall be held by the commission. Oh yeah, so I'm sorry, let me go back to the beginning. A public hearing shall be held on any subdivision of 4 lots or more. In addition, a public hearing regarding application for approval of a subdivision of less than 4 lots shall be held by the commission if in its judgment the circumstances require such action. The commission shall hold a public hearing on any application for re-subdivision. So I just want to toss this out to you guys for consideration. The public hearing, according to statute, is not a requirement for subdivision. It is definitely a requirement for re-subdivision. So the question is, do you want to make a public hearing mandatory for every subdivision of 4 lots or more?
Should be 3 lots, not 4 lots.
Well, this, as it's worded here, it's broken into 2. They're saying for everyone of 4 or more, and it's a may situation for 3 or less. Well, really just 3, because 2 is a free split. So the question, you know, it's a multi-part question. Do you want to make public hearings mandatory? In other words, a shall construction. Do you want to make them mandatory at this level or at a different level? Or make it a may situation throughout? And there are arguments for and against, of course. But that's something that you should talk through, I think.
My vote's for using the word may all the way through, whether it's 3 lots or 12 lots.
And just for the, go ahead.
The only thing with putting the may on that, you know, somebody might say, well, you got through with the may and I had to do it. So
well, that's because I thought you had more complex problems that may create other issues. So we're going to make you go for a public hearing, but whoever's sitting beside you, theirs is just cut and dry. They got 25 acres. They're going to cut it into 4 lots. And I don't think you need to force them to go for a public hearing unless there's some extenuating circumstances.
Just from my experience, I think you should keep it at 4 because I think the neighbors, the surrounding abutters have a right to know that the land is going to be developed into a subdivision.
Well, I won't fight about it, but
I
agree.
agree.
Get any ideas, voice your opinion.
I agree with what she just said. It should be because of the people that are next to it. It should go to a public.
Okay, so we're going to go with 3 is a maybe. I mean, maybe, and more than 3 is shall. Is that what we're saying?
Well, that's what Cindy and Jane are concurring on. You know, it is also possible to raise the threshold. I mean, you know, is 4 lots enough to trigger that? You know, that's also something that could be discussed. I think there is definitely some merit that once things get to a certain size, that the potential impact is such that you might want to make that mandatory. But is that threshold 4?
I would keep it at 4 and just disregard the 3. You know, I wouldn't even address 3. I would keep it at 4.
I agree with that also. It should be kept at 4.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
If somebody wants a three lot subdivision that just goes through and there's no, it doesn't have to go to the commission.
Yeah, so as it's constructed here, the commission may ask for a public hearing on a 3-lot subdivision, presumably if they think there's something highly unusual about it, or if it's hard for me to picture something like that, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't exist.
Ms. Tara.
Yes, Mr. Lanky.
Wouldn't it be, if we just keep the 4 lots or more, 3 acres, 3 lots or less, leave it up to the CEO and let her determine. I don't want to put more weight on her shoulders, but you know, that would make sense, is let her determine that three lots, you know, or less, does it warrant to bring it to the commission? That would probably eliminate a lot of, you know, all this back and forth stuff.
Well, this was discussing whether it's a public hearing, so it's got to go beyond the commission. And I think Cindy's got broad shoulders. She can make the decision whether it needs to, a 3-lot subdivision should come for a public hearing, or whether it should just go right on by.
Yeah, I agree with that, Randy.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree with that also.
Anyone disagree with that?
We're just trying to make everything simplified here, you know what I mean, for people, so they don't come in and they're not overwhelmed. That's the whole thing.
All right, so with that, a public hearing, but do you want, and maybe I missed something because I have not been at all these meetings, but do you still want to approve a subdivision? Three of 311.
Yeah, upon your recommendation, you know, so you decide if, you know, with the three lot deal, and just bring it. You just say, okay, what do you know? I approve this. You're just looking for the final okay from the commission.
Okay.
Yes, no, or indifferent.
Yes, that's what I want to know. Okay.
Are you comfortable with that? Because the other alternative is a site plan review without a public hearing, which is like that middle level of review.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I personally, yeah, I think that the planning commission members should know in case they are questioned by people in the community. I think they should know what's going on when it comes to subdivision. Yes.
So you think site plan review by the commission?
Yeah.
For 3 lots?
Yes, because that's what we have now.
Yeah.
Even though, well, yeah, that's what we have now.
Does anyone disagree with that?
I'm in favor of it.
I'd say let's go with a hearing no objection. I say go with that last comment.
Okay. Will do. All right, so here's another comment that was carried over related to public hearings. So public hearings are scheduled within 65 days of the date of receipt of application. Blah, blah. So it's actually not a comment on number 2. It's a general comment on this section. In the zoning regulations, we had added a provision, and I'm going to be paraphrasing because I don't have those in front of me, that essentially described what the purpose of the public hearing is. Essentially saying the public hearing is to receive commentary from the public if the application conforms to all the standards of the subdivision regulations. The Planning and Zoning Commission must approve it, but may set standards based on the public hearing. And we did that in the zoning regulations based on a general misunderstanding of what the public hearing can accomplish. In other words, you know, a public hearing where people just come in and say they don't like something or want something does not bear on whether the application is fully and legally correct. If it's fully and legally correct, the commission is obligated to approve it. However, they do have the authority to modify it. And I think that's the piece that, you know, gets lost. I personally would recommend carrying that provision over for the increased clarity. But again, that is up to you guys to discuss.
I think that's a good idea. Let's carry it over because then it'll eliminate a lot of problems.
Yes.
I mean, we do have made recommendations to the applicants and et cetera, that, you know, on things. And they were they pretty much, you know, said, okay, no problem, because, you know, we're not there to stop it. We're just saying, okay, if you meet all the criteria, but you know, we're going to give you some recommendations on some things, because you got to remember, there are people that understand what it takes to do a subdivision or build a subdivision, what's involved. And, you know, the foresight from that person or persons can be very helpful to the applicant or et cetera, or to the CEO, you know, so a decision is made in the better or correct form.
Anybody else want to weigh in there?
I'd just say to carry that over just to keep everything the same.
Okay.
I can go along with that.
Yeah, I go along with that.
I can go along with that as well. Keep it the same.
What was that? I didn't get to hear. What Ms. Salsi said.
She was agreeing with you, John.
Wow. Yeah. Let's like, let's just keep it so it's nobody says one is different from the other. If you can keep it balanced, that's the whole key.
Yeah. Okay. I love consensus. Makes my day happy. Take a look at this comment.
I have on the thing about the 65 days. We're not there yet, are we?
Well, we just scrolled past it, but I'll go back.
My question to that, I would like to bring a question to the because this is what the subcommittee is all about, is to deal with it. Do we really have to have excuse me, the 65-day total thing? That's a long time.
I'm not, well, we don't have to go 65 days, but I believe that, I almost think that state statute that you have to do something within 65 days, or if you don't, it is automatically approved or something.
Yeah, well, it says down below on number 2 that a failure of the commission to act within the prescribed time shall be considered as an approval, and certified to the effect that shall be issued by the commission on demand in accordance with section 826, okay, of the general statute. But my whole thing behind that is, do we really have to have 65 days? Can we drop it down a little bit, to, sometimes the applicant or whoever, for this whole thing, they could be on a timetable, trying to get other things going.
We don't have to spend 65 days.
You have to follow what is in section 8.2. I just read it.
Okay.
And 8.2 is planning and zoning. So you have to follow it says the planning commission of any municipality shall hold a public hearing on an application or request for a special permit or special exception as provided in section 8-2.
Oh, that's 8-2, not 8-26.
Well, yeah. This says 8-2. Could be.
What does 826 say of the general statute?
Oh, 826. Well, I'd be here all night reading it.
Okay.
Well, yeah, 826 is long.
Yeah.
That's what I'm reading now. Is that's the statute? That's the subdivisions. Let me just scroll up here.
Oh, so that's the whole subdivision section, 8-26.
Yeah, 8-26. Approval of subdivision and re-subdivision plans. Waiver of certain regulation requirements, fees, hearing, notice, application involving an inland wetland or water course.
So 8-26D, Cindy, I think is the one, right? That is regarding hearings.
26A, effective change in subdivision or zoning regulations or boundaries, blah, blah, blah. I'm scrolling down. 826B, notice to regional advisory councils. 826C, subdivision to be, now that starts with the subdivision to be completed within 5 years of plan approval exceptions.
So D is not here regarding hearings?
No. Let me just scroll down some more and see which one is the hearings. 26D is hearings.
Yeah, that's what this says, 8-26D.
In all matters wherein a formal application, request, or appeal is submitted to a planning commission under this chapter, all public hearings shall be held and all decisions made in accordance with the provision of section 8-7D. Yes, you're right. It's 8-7D.
7D.
Yeah, and that's the zoning regulations.
Okay.
And John was talking about 65 days being too long. We can do it, and if it worked. So our meeting was 2 weeks after the application came in. It meets the 10 days that it has to be in before the meeting, and if we didn't have any problem with it, we could do it in 2 weeks time and not 65 days. I think the 65 days is to make it so that to do what John wanted is not just keep putting it off and make somebody wait 3 or 4 months to get a hearing. The 65 days, actually, you look at a calendar, they get you 2 months meetings.
Yeah, so the 65, right, the 65 days is your maximum. That's the longest that you have. But if you could turn it around within 30 days, no, you know, then that's also an option.
Okay.
Yeah, but it says within. So as long as you do it within that 65 days, you're good. But you cannot go over the 65 days. So I say leave it as it is.
Precisely.
Yep.
Yeah, even the Wetlands Commission and the Aquifer Protection Agency follows the section 8-7D of the zoning regulations for the hearings and decisions, time limits, day of receipt, etc.
So is
and
that
that 65 days is so that commission won't procrastinate and keep putting somebody off for no good reason.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It should, it's within that 65 days. You can't go over the 65 days.
Right.
Unless the applicant approves it.
Yeah, well, you can get an extension, but
Extension.
That's part. I mean, you have to get the approval from the person trying to make this subdivision plan.
So Cindy, on this number 4, and this is not a comment that is currently dropped in, but if we just change the reference in that item to 8-7D, that's the same here, right? The failure of the commission to act within the prescribed time shall be considered as an approval, and a certificate to that effect shall be issued by the commission on demand in accordance with section. Now here it says 8-26, but we should be back in 8-7D here.
I think so, but let me just scroll up to 8-6. Powers and duties of the Board of Appeals.
So definitely not 8-6.
No. So it's 8-7D.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And this is where it's interesting because and again, I was just scrolling through the subdivision regulations, but the notice, the 2 references to notices is to NECOG, to the Regional Planning Agency, and to the abutting town. If your boundary abuts the town or extends over into the next town, you have to notify them. But there's something in here about notification to abutters. So, so this is where you would find that answer for 200 or 500, I believe. It's long, so I'd have to read the whole thing. So, you know, we can do research on that.
So this is how it reads in what we have. After it has been determined by the ZEO that the application is complete and that an application has been received by the Inland Wetlands Commission, 2 copies shall be retained for study by the commission and other interested agencies. The ZEO shall transmit copies of the maps and plans to other boards, commissions, public agencies, officials, and consultants, as in the opinion of the commission may be advisable for their information, review, and recommendations. If a subdivision abuts or includes land in another town, the applicant shall submit 3 additional copies. Oh, this language is wrong. The applicant shall submit 3 additional copies to the Northeast Connecticut Council of Governments.
Now this is I'm reading something here. Zoning. You guys can continue. I can continue reading this. I can listen with my left ear and read with my eyes. I'm playing some.
All right, so let's go back down to where we were. All right, I need to look at this little section. There's an incomplete sentence here. And this is regarding commission approvals. Completion of any required road, drainage, or other subdivision improvements prior to endorsement of the record subdivision map or in lieu of such completion prior to endorsement, execution of an agreement and posting of a performance bond payable to the town of Thompson and acceptable to the town council guaranteeing such completion. Oh, I see. She's saying that it's a sentence fragment, but it's modifying this number 7. Commission approval shall include and be conditioned upon the following as applicable to a particular application. All right, so the sentence fragment makes more sense. But then there's another sentence fragment. Okay, the performance guarantee. What is going on here? Commission approval shall include and be conditioned upon the following as applicable to the particular application. Completion of any required road, drainage, or other subdivision improvements prior to endorsement of the record subdivision map, or in lieu of such completion prior to endorsement, execution of an agreement and posting of a performance bond payable to the town of Thompson and acceptable to town council guaranteeing such completion. The performance guarantee, I see, okay. The standards and conditions for the bond are described in, yes. So Marla was saying that that's an incomplete sentence. That is actually a placeholder, okay. All right, so that's just, I need to drop in the correct citation. Oh, but it did lead to a follow-up comment. So I need to correct this by dropping in the correct citation to the within the document. However, what I discovered was that bonding is discussed in section 8-9, but we don't have a section for performance bonding. We do have sections for bonding for improvements and maintenance. So if performance bonds have a different set of standards to bonding for improvements or maintenance bonds, it seems to me that there is a gap in our descriptions of bonding. Probably not something we're going to resolve here because I'm going to have to go back and add some text. But would you generally agree that there are different standards that need to be described for performance bonding than for bonding for improvements or maintenance bonding? Those of you who have more experience in reviewing and setting bonds are the ones I'm particularly looking for here.
I don't have any expertise on that.
I mean, I guess one question is, what is the difference between a performance bond and bonding for improvements? The bonding for improvements is a part of the performance of the application, right?
Wow.
It's you that. Oh yeah.
Go ahead, John.
You just brought up. You just raised a good point. Performance bond. I think that's something we're going to have to really sit down and really hash it out, because I think it should be pretty. Well, I'll listen to Ms. Dunn's idea on it. She's been doing this a lot longer than me, as in the let's call it the sitting in the office like this for X amount of years and going down the road. But being out in the field and everything, from what I've learned, is that they used to have like town. I forgot what Dudley and Webster used to use, but I know they used to have it was a good considerable amount. Now I'm not going to say 10%, more than that, maybe 15 to 25%. And they had this money sitting there. So from 1 year of completion or whatever, and it was turned over to the town, that they had that availability of money to do any repairs without like dipping into the till of the town. That's my perspective. But if Cynthia wants to step in on this and give me her perspective, maybe it'll help me clarify. But me, to me, they would pretty much would be the same, because you need money. I was going to say the same thing.
You need a definition of the two so we know what the difference is.
Correct.
As far as I'm concerned, the same thing. Pick which one you want to use.
Okay, so in your experience, you are not requiring 3 different bonds. You're requiring 2 different bonds.
Yeah.
Bonding for improvements and maintenance bonds.
Correct. I mean, that's what's going to happen. You know, I mean, and it's up to that point. You know, once the road is cleared, you know what I mean, we get, the commission gives the okay to accept the road and everything. You know, I mean, we're going to say the developer or the contractor of that project and everything, you know, he's doing, you know, going to do what he has to do. But, you know, now it reverts to the town. Now why should the town accept anything that could happen within the year that was probably not our fault, the town's fault, and that money should be there. So, you know, it should be at least a good amount. I'm not saying 10%, but it should be better than 10%, you know, at least up to 25, hold it for 1 year. Everything looks good. And then we, you know, or throw in another clause to that, in my opinion, and let it decrease by 5% or 5 to 10% for the next 3 years. So we got that coverage. You know, I mean, you know, we're allowing more houses built in subdivisions, but, you know, after a while, where does the money come from? You know, so at least we'd have the town would have a nest egg. Let's put it that way. That's my opinion.
Webster's dictionary has a definition of performance bond versus maintenance bond.
Maintenance bond.
And in my opinion, you can use either one and they both do the same thing. But
yeah, well, instead of having both, just make it under one title. You know what I mean? Well, Cynthia, you did it in Putnam when you were doing that. What was the criteria there?
John, I didn't do subdivisions in Putnam, so
okay.
Fred Wojak did them actually, but an example is what we just did with La Valley. We
Correct.
lowered the bond because there still was some more work to do, and so that protects the town from being responsible for those roads until that whole subdivision is completed, and then you do a year maintenance bond on it.
So in your opinion, Cindy, does it seem that performance bond and bonding for improvements are synonymous? If they mean the same thing,
right,
we'll just use one term or the other, because what tripped me up when I was looking at this is, why are we talking about performance bonds here when there aren't, the sections on bonding are for bonding for improvements and maintenance bonds?
Well, I think you need a maintenance bond in there. I think you need a section for maintenance bond.
We do have one. We have sections for bonding for improvements and maintenance bonds, but in this language, which is the original language, you know, that we didn't change, it refers to performance bonds. So when I was looking at Marla's comment, that tripped me up. I'm like, oh, we don't talk about performance bonds, but it seems to me that based on this conversation and, you know, what experience I do have, that we're never looking for 3 bonds. We're looking for 2 bonds, one at the front end and one at the back end.
Right. Yes.
Right. So it would be a choice between what terminology in that case. Is it a performance bond or is it bonding for improvements? And whichever term between those two, that's the one we should use throughout whenever that type of bond is referenced.
Well, my feel to me, the improvement, because a subdivision is an improvement of vacant land. So that's a performance bond. You're performing a job on vacant land, and you have these expectations that were approved by the P&Z according to your site plan. And then when it's said and done, you need to have a maintenance bond in place so everything works, so the town is not responsible for anything that breaks down for a year after the subdivision is completed.
Right.
I would suggest that you would put this on hold for now. Contact either NECOG or maybe even Janet would know whether we need to use a different description for each one or whether they're the same.
Yep.
I was just going to say the same thing Randy just did. I think we need a little more investigation on this, so we don't have to go back to it after somebody, somebody from the town notices it and knows more about this than everybody, that's talking right now.
Yep.
Okay, I agree.
Right. So I will look into that a little further. And if it turns out that those two things are synonymous, the question will be, which is the more correct term? And we will adjust the language accordingly.
There you go. We'll let you do that if they're the same, if they're synonymous.
Yep.
Miss Tara.
Yes, John.
I would, what Randy said and everything, I was just going to say that. But my suggestion to you would be not only get an opinion from Janice, from J&D, but also what's the other one out there in Parfit, that KWP, is it?
Oh, yeah.
Get an opinion from 3 other companies that do this and see what, and then bring it together. And if their reasoning of from the 3 people are pretty much together, then we got something, we got a good basis to work with. If we, and I have a lot of respect for Janet, but in this case here, we need to just get more opinion, get 3 different opinions or 4. There probably, I could get a hold of a couple people and then send them your way or something. But I think that's what we need to do, is get get some opinion of at least 3 minimum. So at least when we hash this out, but we don't need to have 2 bonds or 2 different. Maybe we can get it all under one umbrella and cover from front to back. You know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah. All righty.
Do you concur with that?
I can do that. No problem. Okay, so that is an item that needs a little more clarification, which I will provide and amend accordingly. Okay, so this one is a hairy one, I think. This is a deletion that was made, back to the header of the section. And this is commission approval shall include and be conditioned upon the following as applicable to a particular application. One of those items was where the subdivision involves construction of improvements or excavation, grading, or depositing of materials in a special flood hazard area, presentation of a copy of certificate of compliance by the building official of the town of Thompson. So Marla had a question wanting to verify that such a certificate is not required by the flood prevention ordinance and wanted to know why it was removed. So here in my follow-up comment is the entire history of this item H. The removed item to which Marla referred is this, where the subdivision involves construction of improvements or excavation, grading or depositing of material. Okay. That's actually the repeat. It was removed based on the following comment from D. Held, Provost, and Rivero. This would typically be associated with infrastructure in the development, not houses. This is not the purview of the building official and should probably be removed. The PZC may wish to consider whether they want to amend the previous text and restore it. I did a little more digging into this. The flood prevention ordinance was mistakenly removed from the current code of ordinances and moved to the historic, meaning the obsolete, record of ordinances. Following a conversation with Donna Hall, she was able to clarify that the ordinance needs to be revised and restored. And she further clarified that the provision that was removed is appropriate and should be retained. So I am suggesting adding it back, unless anybody feels strongly that Dave Held's original comment is the one that applies here. And again, the item in question is as a condition of a complete application, essentially, where the subdivision involves construction of improvements or excavation, grading, or depositing of materials in a special flood hazard area, presentation of a copy of certificate of compliance by the building official of the town of Thompson. And again, Donna Hall concurs that that is correct. And the observation was made that it was not relevant to this portion of the process by one of the engineers who commented on this. I am inclined to concur with Donna. But if anybody has thoughts, I'll take them now.
I would concur with Donna.
So would I.
too.
Yeah. Yep.
It is a little pesky that flood prevention ordinance has vanished from the current code, but since we're going to our online code, I'm confident that it will be restored properly.
Well, that's interesting how that gets restored. Huh.
Well, so it's actually not that complicated, I think, to restore it, in that historic code of ordinances is a file of ordinances that have become functionally obsolete, but none of them have actually been rescinded.
Oh, okay.
So since it hasn't been rescinded, it should just be a case of putting it in the right place. And when the genuinely obsolete ones, you know, are confirmed and fully identified, the Board of Selectmen has to go through some kind of process to rescind them, which may involve town meeting. I don't know, but it shouldn't be a difficult thing to restore something that was mistakenly put in the wrong archive, at least.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I don't know where the fill is coming from. If it's part of the house or whatever, it would be, I can see where the building official would have authority over it, but if it's part of the infrastructure, for instance, where the driveway meets the road or something like that, I don't know who has the authority on that.
Yeah, Randy, I think that's the exact same point Dave Held was trying to make. So maybe it's just a matter of clarifying.
I don't know who you clarify it with, but I think that's the right wording for tonight.
Yeah.
Let's read the, or did you see a copy of the ordinance? Did Donna show it to you?
Yeah, it's like 12 pages long. I have a copy in my office, you know, a photocopy of it in my office because it was never digitized.
Okay.
I think this is number 2. We come back to the next meeting and get some more expertise on definitions here.
So that
I'd be interested in seeing that ordinance.
Yeah, I've got it in the
Okay.
office.
Kira,
Yep.
you know, as a building official, there's nothing in chapter 541 in Connecticut statutes that gives the building official any authority over flood hazards. Sorry. I know if I were working in town and somebody asked me to verify that, issue a certificate, I have no authority.
I was just going to ask you that question. Thank you, Mr. Hill. That would have been one of my things. Why is the building official got that authority? That should be more or less the zoning enforcement officer with the commission.
Exactly.
Or the inland wetlands there,
right.
As well.
Yep.
Alvin, what's the statute you referred to?
It's chapter 541, section 29. I don't have it right in front of me, but you look up through chapter 541.
That's the building code.
That's the building code.
Okay.
Okay.
541, you said, Alvin?
Yeah, 541.
Thank you. The building code. Okay.
Right.
Thank you. I'll be on that tonight. I'll be up till midnight.
So, and you're saying it does not give the building official authority.
There is nothing to do with flood hazard in statute, nothing. Or in the ICC, any of their codes. Nothing. I've never seen anything on special flood hazards. Building official is construction. Residential.
Anything to do with floods would have something to do with wetlands.
Exactly.
Yeah. Inland wetlands. And that, because we refer to them on stuff like that.
Okay.
That should be almost, you know, inland wetlands, and as well as the ZEO. So because we before any type of decision could be made, you know, we look to the inland wetlands for their insight on, you know, what would be the proper procedure. Okay. So that would be between Marla and ZEO, so to speak.
Yeah.
So Cindy, let's you and I look at this a little more closely with that ordinance and figure out what this is actually meant.
The other issue too with the building official is that I could not issue a certificate of occupancy for any of those homes on that subdivision until that section there has been approved by wetlands.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So this seems like somehow we've smashed together some of the roles of wetlands with the building official.
Correct.
Okay, so let's see if we can tease that out, Cindy, you and I, and make this more correct.
Ms. Terrell, would this be in the previous subdivision, the old subdivision, this wording? Or the verbiage?
Yes, this red line here, item H, indicates something that was deleted. And that's what Marla's question was based on. She wanted to know why it was deleted. So, you know, we went back and I found, take this out. I found Dave Held's comments, which is what we had discussed at the first round, and his observations, which are exactly what Randy just brought up, that, you know, the stuff that's being referenced here is the infrastructure in the development, not houses, and therefore not the building official. As Alvin himself, the former building official, just confirmed. But when I went up and asked Donna about it, Donna said that that was in fact correct. So it seems to me that there is perhaps a muddying of roles here that we need to clarify. It may be that we do need something in relationship to the flood prevention ordinance regarding special flood hazard areas and construction of infrastructure. But if the building official doesn't have the statutory authority to sign off on that, whose signature do we really want here? So, and it seems like possibly that's really inland wetlands. I can ask that question of Marla. But whatever this provision is, if it's going to be restored, it needs to be restored correctly.
I would safely assume, and that's, in my feeling is we need her to, you know, the inland wetlands to sign off before anything else could go forward.
Well, we had a meeting this morning, Marla and George, who's the chairman of Inland Wetlands, and Joe, before he flew out to his conference, Cindy and Amy and I. And the comments that Marla has provided thus far have been general. She is working now on the content that is specific to wetlands. And she's going to get those to me pretty much as quickly as she can. So I will make a point of asking her to look at this one with me in particular early, so that we can, you know, clarify what we really intend here.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that kind of like threw me for a little building official. That's a good one. How do they get that authority?
Well, a lot of kooky things have happened over the years.
Got that
so we
right.
can discuss this some more next meeting after we get some answers.
Yep. Let's see. This is just a general comment because Marla had asked where some of the digital submission requirements were deleted in a later section. So because we're on the recording, I'm just stating it here. This provision, the applicant shall also deliver the record subdivision map, construction plans, and grading plan in digital format prior to the signing of final Mylars. All digital mapping data shall be provided in a format accessible to town staff. I essentially struck an entire section on digital data requirements because the digital data requirements should be described in the application, and also digital formats change over time. So I wanted to make that less specific and just make it clear that the mapping data needs to be in an accessible format. Now I would find that sufficient. If anybody thinks that is insufficient, you know, let me know now so we can drop that in and do more work on it. So I'll read it again just for, you know, wrapping our heads around it. The applicant shall also deliver the record subdivision map, construction plans, and grading plan in digital format prior to the signing of final Mylars. All digital mapping data shall be provided in a format accessible to town staff.
I don't pretend to be an expert on it, but it sounds good to me. If it's not going to be in a format accessible to town staff, why do we need it at all? But I'm being a smart ass there. This is fine. Well, I think we should go with it.
So I'm confused here. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So the red on here, that was what was in there before, and you scratched it?
No, I know that I actually don't like working with red line drafts. I find them very confusing. You see up here, this one, which is in red and is struck through.
Okay.
That indicates something that was in there that was removed.
Okay.
This item J, which is also in red, indicates that this is new text added in this section. So it's flagged red to let you know that an action has been taken here. In this case, the action is that it was added.
All right, so my question on this, let me just read it again real quick. The applicant shall also deliver the recorded subdivision map, construction plans, and grading plan in digital format prior to the signing of the final Mylars. All digital mapping shall be provided in a format accessible to town staff. So does this mean when it's all finished, or as they're doing it?
So this is one of several requirements of the application process. And so this is saying to me that at some point between the submission of the application and before the final step of signing Mylar, so that's your full application process, we must also receive this information, this mapping information, in a digital format for the archive. So this doesn't replace the documentation requirements that the Planning and Zoning Commission has, you know, the at least 2 copies of yada, 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 the plans and the 1117s and the PDFs. And this is before we're all wrapped up, we need to have the digital record as well for the permanent archive. It's essentially a condensing of a section that existed earlier near the back of the document, when that stuff should have been up here with the application requirements in the first place.
Okay, so I don't want to put, so what town staff should have it? And the reason why I ask that, because this is for the archives, right?
Right, this would be an archive thing.
Okay, so
I would say assessor and town clerk at least.
Okay, all right, good, because the reason why I'm asking that is because when I walked into the office, I couldn't get into any of Alvin's records. So if it was on the zoning office record, if that's the case in the future, nobody's ever going to be able to see it. unless they change the system of the next person trying to get into my records, which I hope they do, because there's a lot of stuff there. And I'm sure Alvin had a lot of stuff there that I just couldn't get into.
So this language to me is anticipating that over time our record keeping will be increasingly digitized.
Digital.
And I think that's fair to say.
All
Where
right.
it occurs in the existing subdivision regulations is tacked on in the back. So what that implies to me is that at some point, as you know, because these were written in whenever they were written, right? 2008. That was a concession, you know, a new concept almost, right? So you've moved from all the stuff on the papers and blueprints and Mylars increasingly towards having this digital data. So it was just added at the back to acknowledge that time is moving forward. Whereas from my perspective, the appropriate place to put it is in describing the information that has to be a part of the application process, and that would be here.
Okay. Don't you think that, do you think that it should specify exactly which office it should go in the town? Instead of saying town staff, isn't that kind of generalized?
All right, so
that any
CEO's
person
office.
following us will know where to go to get it if they need to do research.
The CEO's office and the town clerk, so at least you got it covered.
Okay.
That's my opinion. You got two places that it can be.
Okay.
So just make a note to check this clause out with Donna, because I know that she has those trays and trays of maps. And there's subdivision maps up there too. See if that's something that they need to keep in an archive, or if something that, no, if it's in the folder, I'm good type thing.
Okay. Their data storage.
Let me ask you this question, just to be like a devil's advocate. Would it hurt to have CEO, town clerk, and the building is? But see, the building inspector's office should, you know, strictly all just anything to do with a building that's being put up on,
right,
whatever. I get that, but you know, I mean, the CEO, your office should have documentation as well as what is going to be in the town clerk's office that's on file. So at least we got records covered both sides. If something happens to your records, at least we have a shot that whoever is the CEO 10 years from now, God, I hope you're around for the next 20 with me. But, you know, I mean, at least we got a place to go. You got some place to go to get some records. If, you know, something failed over here, you know, get the backup. Or is that asking for too much?
No, I don't think it is, because, you know, all the records now in the office that I have are on the OneDrive. So they're basically accessible, I guess, because yeah, anybody can go in now and get my records.
Well, they're public. Yeah, they're public records. So.
Well, that's the point.
But I mean, anybody in the town hall can go in and get them too. So.
Right.
I guess. I don't know how that works. Anyways, they're all in OneDrive now.
All right. So we have our little thing to check on, but we know the purpose. We might be just about through here. That is a formatting comment, so we can disregard that, and that's release of bond. And that is everything in this section, I think. Yep, that's everything in this section at 8:17. So that was the end of the first three simple sections. Is there anything anybody wants to go back over before we call it a night, which I would be personally happy to do?
Can you scroll back down again? I just wanted to see something.
Mm-hmm. Let me know where to stop.
Yeah, right here.
Yep.
Okay, all right, fine. No, I'm good.
You good?
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to go back over briefly?
I just have one question. There's a performance bond, there's a maintenance bond, and what was the third one?
So the three bonds that we see reference to are bonding for improvements.
Improvement, okay.
Right. Performance bond and maintenance bond.
Okay.
I
just want to look into them myself too.
Yeah, I am pretty sure based on the way the language is constructed and, you know, the history of what kinds of, or how many bonds we've asked for from developers, that performance bond and bonding for improvements are synonymous, but I'm going to double check that. Both to confirm that that's the case and also which term is more correct.
Look at the last paragraph on the release of bond and all of that stuff.
Yep.
It says maintenance bond shall be a cash bond and shall be an amount approved by the commission as 25% of the current cost of the original improvements.
Yep. So that's the maintenance. And then up here in that, since we're on the bonding section,
Number one, performance guarantee.
yeah, performance guarantee or performance bond. So we're talking about performance bond again here. And it refers to the required improvements, but it doesn't refer to a separate bond for the improvements. We're talking about a performance bond. So I'm increasingly sure that those two terms are being used interchangeably, but I will verify that.
So that would be an area that we could probably put together as one, so to speak, or leave it as is.
Well, there are already separate sections describing the bonding for improvements and maintenance bonds. It's more a unification of the language that we're using. Because, like I say, I've been reading these now for months and months and months, and that, you know, pinged my attention. Oh, why are we referring to this third kind of bond now? When in fact, it's just one term saying the same thing as another term, I think.
It's just going to be more educating us on it than anything, more than likely.
Yeah.
What did you say? I didn't hear the first part of that. What'd you say?
I said it's probably going to turn out just more educating us on, you know, that it's 2 instead of 3.
Right. Okay.
Right. Anybody got anything else?
And of course, when we were talking about the bonds earlier, and you have it right here on the release of the bonds, that this has to be in consultation with the Public Works Director. And I've actually done that twice with Rich, you know, in Madison Ave and La Valley.
Right. Okay.
All right. So it sounds to me like we're getting close to wrapping up. Anybody got anything else they want to add tonight? Get any smarter, or are you getting tired?
I'm just getting going.
Well, you can stay on, but I don't know if everyone else wants to.
No. I didn't mean it that way.
You can come milk cows with Kai's.
Hey, I haven't been around cows in them over 40 years, but I know what, I wouldn't mind jumping back into it.
Midnight comes quick.
You got it.
How's the calving going?
Oh, good. That was last night. We had 2 born last night, a bull and a heifer.
Oh,
congratulations.
Thank
just
you.
to keep it in mind, if just for information, with the number of cows she's got, they get a new calf about every other day, average.
Yep.
I guess it's better than all going at once.
Yes.
And the herd gets bigger.
Okay, guys.
All right.
I believe a motion's in order.
I do.
Do I have a
second?
All right, I have motion and Ray seconds to adjourn. Meeting adjourned.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Good night.
You too.